Hello? Hello? Can you hear me? Hello? Hello? Do you hear me?
Testing, testing, testing.
We are not alone.
Testing, testing, testing. Testing, testing, testing. Yeah.
Do you hear me? Do you hear me? Hello? Hello?
Hi, Sandy. We can not hear you through the room. We currently have some issues here locally.
Testing, testing, testing.
This just joined.
Yeah, there it is. All right. Slow progress here. Sandy, testing for Sandy. I did. Are you muted on that laptop? I'm muted here.
Hear me?
So nothing should be coming through here except my remote.
Testing. Okay.
Okay, Sandy says she can.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
All right, we hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, finally. Okay.
I think it's the same thing. She's connected via Beat Echo. If it's coming up as speakers, it's. Was it coming up as speakers or was it coming out of our networks? How could it? She's only connected remotely through Meet Echo. It can only. What we're saying is, were we getting the Meet Echo through the laptop or was it coming through the root speakers? Sound like it's coming through the speakers. Okay. Which is. Okay. Let's go to materials. Let's get this thing. Status. That's got the agenda in it anyway, doesn't it? It should. Minutes, agenda. It does. All right. Let's move this mic over here. We've done the test. We think we're functional. It appears from what we can tell, we can hear each other on both ends, and I think I've got this thing running like it's supposed to. That doesn't mean I'm correct. I only have a delusion of that correct right now. So considering that time is, we should probably get this rolling. I have not certain how the blues work. I think you need to scan outside or scan this, and then that opens up, does the auto blues like before, so we get both remote and local auto blues, which is pretty darn nice. This was supposed, oh, I'm not. I have to take over. Okay, I have to take over as display. I have to share screen, send video. Nope. Ah, shit. Sorry, my session got bumped out. I'm going to have to reconnect here. So give me a second. I think we can reproduce that. Fairly confident. Hey, and I'm back in. Just waiting for my privileges. And complete. So I open that up. And I want to. I'm going to attempt to share my screen and see if this works. Hold tight.
Yeah.
We're there. Okay. Welcome to the Beer Working Group. We are 12 and a half minutes delayed. Not bad, considering this is the first session in the morning. We're not the only ones going through this confusion. Any working group chairs associated, the laptop in the room is no longer controlling the slides. It's just to control the mic and the camera in the room. Apparently it auto connects. You got to log in with your own laptop, control the slides here. It's all right, just a little twist in the change. So beer, let's see. Oh yeah. Note well, required reading. Everyone noted? Well, nods. It's 10 a.m. no matter where you came from. Shouldn't be too sleepy yet. There's coffee around so we can get there. Minute location and our agendas of now. We got. Oh, we do need minute taker.
Yeah.
We have volunteers to take minutes. Such a wonderful, engaging
path
group.
to success in life. Taking minutes at IETF teaches you all relevant skills.
No, it's a Mother Teresa moment. It's like feeding the poor. Think how enriching it's going to be for your life taking minutes for us. This is where we assign someone.
You smiled at me. You lost. Okay.
Yeah, man's it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, man's it. I see. He's like, he's looking at me. We have a volunteer. Did you see that? Man volunteer.
You have to avoid eye contact
awesome.
and definitely not smile.
So I think the tool's integrated. It can be done fairly quick with this is note-taking tool.
Just note-taking tool.
Yeah.
Built in.
Go to the note-taking tool. It just automatically puts it up there. So do you see where I'm showing? There. All right, we are there. All right, so let's look at the agenda. We've got status, going through the drafts, what's in the last call, what's actually in the queue, what is expired. It was already called to my attention that there was another expired draft that's actually ready and just need to be refreshed. Stick's going to refresh our memories on that, get it back on the list. Then we've got multicast as a service, extension headers, and the BIER-TE Bift ID. Anything missing?
Did you run status of the drafts?
That's coming up next. This is just minutes. Here we go. The man with no tour.
Yeah, Thomas Eckert. Just sent email to you folks that we've got the BIER-TE in auth 48. Yeah, but then 2 weeks were really painful for all type of other stuff, so it'll only become RFC after BIER-TE draft.
Yeah, the original.
Auth 48, so will become RFC, but only after the IETF.
Okay.
Authors didn't get around
right.
to spend
Excellent.
time.
Thank you, Torlis. All right, nothing missing. All right, so let's go to status. We've got 2 here in the queue. I'm not certain. I think these have been around a while. There's your TE arc is in the queue, right? That's what you were talking about, Torlis? Yeah. Yeah, okay. And Bar IPA's been there a while too. I don't know, we were waiting for AD at the time, last I heard. We also have some AD comments outstanding for B3. Now, a new draft, multicast as a service, we'll hear about today, and there's a beer fast reroute draft that's been adopted now as well.
Yeah, that's about it.
In last call, HBLS, we need, need some review from what I understand. I think we had to go to IDR for review on that too, didn't we? I think we already had that in parallel.
Yes, so we're going on parallel.
And then from there on, it moves into a theme. We need shepherds. We need document shepherds. We have our own man here, who is in one of the reviews. We're waiting for his to be complete. PHP, beer and six, and prefix redistribution all need shepherds. It's a fairly straightforward process. Just a template you go through, Q&A, do some hunting around to make sure you're consistent with what the questions are, list response and things. But it's not a heavy lift. It's just something that shouldn't be done necessarily by the authors of the draft. So we'll go to the list. We'll ask for volunteers again. Everyone's looking down. No one's even making eye contact. So as soon as you ask for it, there we go. I got eye contact. You looking to be a shepherd? Yeah, all right. So pick one. We'll fire off the email list. You can respond to us then or something. And thank you so much.
We need beer in six because the Babel and the National guys are picking up the issue again. That will be hinging around this draft, this discussion.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So he will not be paying for beer the rest of the week. See that? See what you missed out on?
Yeah.
Let's see. Then we've got, so the ping is, I guess, getting an update. Some of that stuff is expired and come back, then refreshed here and there. And then we have one listed expired draft, the IDR extensions. I wish you were beer. Me too, Stig. Go ahead.
So I have this MLD draft that is not listed there. So that was waiting for some PIM extension to be done, but that's done now. It's in auth48. I did post an update before the meeting in March and sent an email. I believe I'm done with the document. And I sent an email a couple of weeks back as well.
All right.
But anyway, as far as I know, it should be ready. But I'm hoping it can go to last call and get some more review.
Excellent.
And it just expired. I'll resubmit it again today.
Yeah, it's a theme.
Yeah. The author's been poked, promised, They want to mention the second one.
Second one being, you lost three in the queue. There's two in the queue, and one has chair comments outstanding waiting to be addressed by the authors. So the V3 extension. Okay.
Nagendra promised the stuff in June to push it up the hill. Nothing happened.
Yeah, we got response from. Okay. Man apparently has Nagendra's leash, and we'll be dragging him back into this. Thank you. We have someone at the mic.
Just some words about the IDR extension draft.
Name and.
Jeffrey John, Juniper.
Okay, go ahead.
So IDR extension drafts, I talked to the main author and editor, Xiaohu Xu, before, and he said he is no longer focused on this work, so we need some other co-authors in the draft to pick up the remaining editing work to address those comments.
Wow, okay. Thanks, Jeffrey. All right. Any other comments? We'll close that piece of material. Got that one open. And I'm still in sharing mode. I'm still in sharing mode. Perfect. All right. First item. Beer multicast service. Jeffrey.
Hello. So the beer multicast as a service draft was recently adopted the working group document. Today I'm going to talk about a new section that I added to the 01 version. It's about supporting beer in VPN, and it's actually this came up as from one of the comments from Fang Hong during the working group adoption. So this is supporting beer in VPN, not using beer for VPN. Next slide, please. So basically, let's say you have you're a provider, you're providing VPN services, and your VPN customers are running beer. What do you do? How do you support it? Next slide. So this involves both overlay signaling and underlay work. Customers beer signaling, then they can do the IGP, BGP signaling in their own sites. But when it comes to over this provider core, we would use the BGP signaling. The existing IDR extensions for beer signaling, I believe it can be used for VPN IP Sapphire as well. So you just attach your beer information to the VPN IP Sapphire NROIs, and then everything should work for the overlay signaling part. Now when it comes to underlay, how do you get customer beer traffic across the provider network? There are two solutions here. One is that you just use ingress replication. So when you do that, it's nothing different from regular beer at all. It's now your VRFs become the customer's beer or routers, and it's you just do the tunneling between the BFRs. Nothing special at all. Now another option is that you forward customers' beer traffic across the provider network using beer itself. The reason to do that is that it gives you efficient replication across provider core. You don't have to do the ingress replication anymore. The one issue is that to do that you need to maintain the customer beer state in the underlay, and that is what this presentation is about. Next slide, please. Before we talk about the underlay signaling and state for the beer VPN, let's review the general beer signaling and Bift calculation in the non-VPN case. So the BFRs signal the beer information TLVs attached to the beer prefixes, and for the egress router, BFIR or BFER, they would include their BFR IDs in the signaling. BFTR, which stands for beer forwarding transit router, they don't include the BFR IDs. So for each beer forwarding table, there is a Bift ID. For example, it could be a beer label. The Bift ID ranges are also included in the signaling. So a Bift ID basically identifies a Bift for a particular subdomain, set tuple. Now, how do we calculate that Bift? We basically, for each Bift entry, is corresponding to a BFER, beer edge router. We find out how to reach that particular BFER. We see that, okay, through the unicast, it's going to be going through a next hop BFR neighbor, and that neighbor advertises a particular label for this subdomain, set. So then we put the entry in the Bift, and the key for that entry is the BFRID modulo the bitstring length. The next hop information for the entry is basically the beer label from that neighbor and a unicast forwarding information on how to reach that neighbor. Notice that the BFER's prefix here is only used to find how to reach it, but it's not used in the beer forwarding table. In the beer forwarding table, it's just the BFR ID. Next slide. So now coming back, how do we do beer VPN signaling in the underlay? Now, in the provider's underlay, a beer subdomain is now extended to include a customer in that tuple. It's no longer just a subdomain of the provider beer domain. It also, you could have you will have per customer subdomains there. Notice that your different beer VPN customers, they could have overlapped subdomain IDs or even BFR IDs. So now we need to identify each beer forwarding table using additional piece of information. Here we call it, we add the route distinguisher in the control plane. But in the in the forwarding plane, it's still just use the Bift ID as before, like a beer label. And the beer architecture initially intentionally made sure that Bift ID itself is just opaque number. It does not carry any other semantics. And that design allow us to do this now. You can extend the subdomain to include customer information, whatever. But when the forwarding plane, the Bift ID is just a opaque number that maps to whatever tuple you give to it. So that's a very good design that we are making use of now. Now, when it comes to signaling, now the P routers and PE routers in the underlay, they will advertise beer information TLV for their underlay loopbacks only. And now inside the beer info TLV, they add route distinguisher to the subdomain ID. And then for the PEs, they will include beer proxy range sub TLV to list BFR IDs for customer BFERs that are reachable through that PE. That information is now used to calculate per customer BIFs.
Can I ask an understanding question?
Sure.
I'm lost at the point.
Name.
Oh, 12 seconds. Behind a in the service provider domain, let's assume a situation egress PE with 2 or 3 egress CE of the customer. Each of the egress CE has a bit in the bit string. Is that mapped one-to-one into the beer bit string in the core when you do run it?
So for each customer BIFs on the CE side, then there will be corresponding BIFs in the provider network itself.
Okay. So it's a one-to-one mapping.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah. And I will talk about the scaling implementation on that as well. Yeah. Next slide. So this is a picture of the involved overlay and underlay signaling. We have those small clouds for customer beer domains using IGP or BGP signaling. They connect to the PEs. And among those PEs, you probably cannot see the color clearly, but here, the purple color is overlay signaling among the PEs using the IDR extensions. And then in the underlay, there is a provider beer, and both the P routers and PE routers, they use IGP or BGP signaling for both provider domain beer and customer beer domain signaling. Next slide. So the existing drafts already talk about a provider providing beer transport to multiple clients, which could be overlapping. But in that earlier version, the assumption was that those clients, even though they are different customers, they would all be in the same global table. And the beer prefixes from the customers, from the clients, are actually advertised into the underlay. That is change. That can stay, but now with the VPN mechanism, and we can use the same mechanism for VPN, just for both VPN and non-VPN cases. We instead of leaking the customer prefixes into the underlay, we're just leaking the customer BFR IDs into the underlay, and that makes use of the beer proxy range subtier of this, and that is added into the 001 revision.
We got a question at the mic. Might mute him.
I'm Fan Hong from Huawei. For the BRVP, I think Ingress replication is the best solution because, as you said, it has a low beer state on the P routers. To link the client BFID range to provider network is not a hierarchical solution, I think. It somewhat violates the traditional VPN architecture because either of the client BFR prefix, client BFR ID or client BFR ID range is the root information of the client network. Leaking them into provider network, this is a scalable problems. In addition, I think you should check whether it is beyond the scope of the charter of the beer working group and whether it is under the current beer architecture. I think it is somewhat beyond what current beer working group can do. Thanks.
I have one slide regarding the scaling considerations.
Go back.
That should not be the last slide, or is it? Can you? Yeah. Yeah. So indeed, now we have customer specific information in the provider network. Basically, it's per customer or beer forwarding tables, and that is basically a trade-off between the efficient replication and additional states. Now, as for the additional states, I want to point out today in the MVPN or EVPN, when you do selective tunneling, you are essentially adding additional states in the provider network for corresponding the customer flows. For example, you could have one P2MP tunnel for every customer flow in the provider network. That is a precedence, and of course, the provider has to make a choice to decide: am I going to use ingress replication or using the inclusive tunnel for all my customer traffic? Sometimes that may not work well because the amount of additional replication in a provider network is just not going to work out. It's not economical. So here is a similar situation. Yes, ingress replication among the VRFs will work. It does not have the state, but if you introduce additional customer Bift state in the provider network, it provides efficient replication, and you, as a provider, you can control how many customer Bifts to be supported in your provider network. It's compromised, and my thinking is that if the multicast or beer demand picks up, this solution is acceptable and it's feasible and it's worthy. That's my view.
Thomas Eckert again. I think the key difference is not even starting from the number of states that you have, but how you can plan it, right? It moves it from application created state, which even the operator of the customer side may not be able to well control, to operator control, right? So the number of bits are controlled by the customer operator, so that can be brought to be a known number, obviously, right? So that's the main benefit, I think. It's a lot more controllable.
Here is the provider still has controls, right? So
that's what I meant in terms of you don't even need to argue about the numbers, but about the planability of the numbers. You cannot plan, when applications are starting to create flows, right?
Right. This is Greg. Just to help clarify what Torres is trying to say, you're comparing this to traditional IP multicast and VPN, where it's all flow-based state, it's all unbounded, it's driven by applications as opposed to the provider.
And you still have this state on the PE of the service provider when you're running traditional beer only in the service provider. You still have that state there. Now you're pushing it back to wherever the customer wants to have it. And from the customer, you're only getting a plannable, accountable, chargeable number of bits kind of distributed via the bit string. So it's a totally different model. It's not kind of compare sizes. I think,
these are comments in support, but it's from Torres, who has
Thank
already
you.
determined.
I mean, see, he didn't bring them up in the first place, so we need to work out a little bit better marketing of this, because obviously pushing out native IP multicast, so to speak, from the PEs would be a giant step forward.
Thanks.
Tony P. Juniper, the first Torres in marketing, will wonders overseas. No, I have a technical comment on the IGP redistribution. So if we extend the beer information with the RD, then the computation is basically different primary key, and the whole IGP will have to support it to work correctly, which can be done. But what I suggest is to add to IGP kind of a capability indication in the router description, so you know that you're dealing with people who can actually support this RD, or otherwise whatever you have it partitioned, or you have to deal operationally with the issue. Yeah.
Thanks.
Next slide.
Yeah, I think that's probably the last one.
There's the comments.
Just try it. Next slide.
Any more questions? Comments? We have the queue. Have one comment. Oh, Sandy volunteered to take minutes. We already have it done. All right. We got it handled, Sandy. Thank you, though. All right. Thanks, Jeffrey. Next. Oh, next is yours also? I think so. There we go.
Okay, so this is a new draft from co-authors in Juniper, ZTE, China Mobile, and Nokia. Next slide. It's actually a follow-up of two drafts and a presentation I did in last IETF. We had some discussions on the beer extension header. It's based on the MPOS extension header drafts, and we strive for design a generic header extension mechanisms that is aligned with MPOS and IPv6 extension header, so that we can support some generic functions with the same extension header, and whether it is for MPOS or beer or IPv6. And we also strive for multi-vendor support of this proposal. And you'll notice that we have pretty much major vendors in this draft, except we're trying to still get Cisco support. Next slide.
Smiles, you're okay.
So there's a illustration of the header definition. At the very top is the original beer header. It would have its proto field will have a value to say that the beer extension header follows. And at the beginning of that, there is a header of extension header, and then followed by the extension headers. Could be multiple of them. Next slide. Now, the header of extension headers, there is the first 4 bits reserve field. It's really just for it's a nibble because this could be used for MPOS as well. We want to be able to say that. Don't treat this as an IP packet. The next one is a counter of the extension header, followed by the extension header total length, followed by the original upper layer protocol type. Is the real payload after extension header. Then is the next hop type. indicating the type of the real next hop following this header or extension header. This value of this next hop field is from the Internet Protocol Numbers Registry. Remember that we strive to use the same extension header mechanism for all protocol layers, MPLS, BIER, IPv6. Therefore, we want to use this address, the number space from the IP protocol numbers. And that way, if there is an IP extension header for a function that can be applied to BIER or MPLS, we will just reuse the IPv6 extension header. Now, there are two main fields here are critical here. Total, I shouldn't say critical, but it's important that total extension header length gives you the ability to directly locate where the payload is for whatever reason, without going through the headers one by one. The next hop header or value using the IP protocol number space allows you to do the reuse the IPv6 extension headers. Number of headers in this one, I've heard from some people saying that you may not need that, or you may not want it there. For example, if you have to remove a header and you may need to update this field, why bother including it there? Just as long as you have the total length, everything should work fine. That's we can discuss that with MPLS, the co-authors as well. Yeah. Next. Oh, I already talked about that. Why do we want this one? BIER header, the proto field itself is 6 bits with its own space. Now, when we use this one, we can reuse the IPv6 extension headers for whatever function. Now, I do want to point out using the Internet Protocol number space does not mean that every time we design a new BIER extension header, we have to allocate a number from that IPv6 registry. No, we only need one number. That number just means that the next header is really extension header that is not about IP. It could be that it could be for MPLS, for BIER, for whatever. We only need one number from that registry. If you know that you are dealing with a BIER encapsulation, you know that that would be BIER specific. If you know if you're doing the MPLS, you know it's MPLS specific. Next slide. So now extension header, it's just like IPv6. We added one optional extension field there. Basically, let's say that we have to define 5 MPLS BIER specific extension headers for BIER functions. We get one number from IPv6 IP protocol number registry, and then we can define we can allocate 5 extension and value for that field in this picture, and so that they can represent different functions with different BIER extension headers. We could also have one extension value assigned to indicate that for this BIER extension header, there are multiple TLVs for different functions. So there are different ways to do things. You can have one extension value for each BIER specific extension function, or you can have one extension value to use in different TLVs to encode different information for different functions. Next slide. So seeking comments and suggestions, we try to reach consensus from major vendors and operators. I mentioned that we already have quite some major vendors here. That draft song is draft itself is from Huawei, so I assume well that's the implication that implies that we do want to work with all the vendors, including Huawei, to support this. Thanks.
Any other comments or questions? No one in the queue? All right, great stuff. Thanks. One more.
So you will be able to hold the paying forward.
This Torless?
Yep.
Is that you? Really? Okay. Where'd this come from? Sandy. Awesome.
Yep.
Okay, so we need to get Sandy on the mic. Sandy, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. All right. See the
Okay.
slides?
Yes.
We got you. All right. Go ahead, Sandy. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Sandy Zhang from ZTE. This presentation is Bift Id Signaling for BIER-TE. We have co-author Yuehua and Benchong. Next, please.
Yeah. Can you speak louder? Closer to the mic, maybe?
If this is better. Hello?
A little bit, and we need more than that.
Okay. It seems like there is very loud echo.
Yeah, we only have one speaker in the room that seems to be outputting here. Yeah, just do your best to go slow and loud.
Okay. If this is better. Hello?
Yes, that's better.
Hello?
Hello? We
Okay.
can hear you. That's better.
Hello. Okay. Thank you. Should I repeat the first page again? Oh, okay. Let's move this background. Okay. From the BIER-TE architecture, we know that BIER-TE uses explicit passes to forward a multicast packet in BIER domain. The path can be calculated by the controller. Every bit position of the bit string in a BIER-TE packet indicates one or more agencies, instead of a BFER as in BIER. BIER-TE in each BFR has no routing table, but only a BIER-TE forwarding table indexed by set identifier bit position and populated with only those agencies to which the BFR should replicate packets to. As described in BIER-TE architecture, all the BIER encapsulation methods apply to BIER-TE, such as MPLS, Ethernet, or BIER-in6. Next, please. The BIER-TE forwarding is achieved by the BIER header too, but the composition of bit string and the forwarding table is different from BIER. We know that the Bift ID is used to locate the forwarding table of the packet. In order to distinguish the forwarding table used by BIER-TE, the Bift ID in BIER header needs to be different from BIER. Next, please. For the Bift ID signaling, let's take ISIS protocol as an example. In order to support MPLS, Ethernet, and BIER-in6 encapsulation, we advertise the MPLS and non-MPLS encapsulation sub-TLV associated with BIER-TE info sub-TLV, which is defined in draft IETF BIER-TE is. And the BIER's IPv6 encapsulation sub-TLV can be advertised In case the node wants to use BRIN6 encapsulation instead of Ethernet. All the advertisements are similar with RFC 8401 and the draft LSR non-MPLS extension. In case both of the MPLS and the non-MPLS encapsulation sub-TLVs are advertised by one node, the label in MPLS encapsulation sub-TLV and the Bift ID in non-MPLS encapsulation sub-TLV should not be overlapped. The signaling in OSPF and OSPF v3 is similar. So that's all. Any comments?
Torres coming to the mic.
Tolles Eckert. Yeah, sorry, I still didn't have the time to come out to conclusions with this. I'll certainly be happy to support it. From the BIER-TE side, we, the soon-to-be RFC is describing, at least two high-level models of how to share the SI and SD space with BIER. And I think depending on what we want to do there, that may have an impact on what we do in the signaling plane. So hopefully we can have more productive discussion about that on the list.
Thanks, Torres. Next.
Thank you.
Jeffrey from Juniper. So I had a comment for another draft from Huaimo. I had the same comment apply here. I saw a response from Huaimo, but I haven't got a chance to reply. But here, my understanding is when it comes to BIER-TE, we have two things to worry about Bift. One is the Bift ID, and the other one is the content of the Bifts. In case of regular BIER, each BFR will calculate the contents of the Bifts. But when it comes to BIER-TE, my understanding that each BFR only needs to care about its local, the bit positions for its local adjacencies, whether it's direct adjacency or routed adjacencies. So, and that information is better populated from a controller, and instead of using IGP to signal. And if you do use the controller to signal, to provision those content of the bits, then the Bift ID itself can also be signaled as part of that provisioning instead of using IGP signaling. As I mentioned, I have not got a chance to have further discussion with Huaimo, but I think this is related to that discussion as well.
This is Greg. Just for clarification, you're talking about assigning the bits from the controller.
Assigning the bits, yes. Well, so assigning the bits is a part of a planning process,
Yeah.
and then how do you get those bits to the router? And it's in the old days, for example, in the old days, you assign a loopback address, and then you write down a piece of paper and you go to the router and enter it. Here it's similar. You assign the bits, and then you need to put it into the router. How do you put it in the router? Nowadays, you can use a controller, use something. Once you do that, then you as part of that, as provisioning, you could use to do the Bift signaling to assign the Bift IDs as well.
Okay. Thanks.
Hello?
Yeah. Go ahead,
Hello?
Sandy.
May I speak?
Here.
Okay.
Yeah, here,
We know that there is a working group document about BIER-TE Yang, and in that draft, the BFT ID or the agency's BP can also be assigned by the controller and can be downloaded to the devices to run for it. So, if we do this work all by controller, the BIER-TE Yang is enough to do this work. In case we want to use IGP for signaling the bit operation of agencies, maybe we also need to advertise the Bift ID for the working table looking up. Yeah.
Any more comments? Looks like we'll have an active discussion on this on the list, some good feedback. Thank you, Sandy. All right, that is the end of our agenda. I would call this by far the quickest beer working group meeting we've had. Probably the least animated we've had. If anyone wants, like, pardon me? Yes, even though we started a good point, actually, if I even dock that time off, we're about 45 minutes then of actual operation here. Normally we're pushing our 2-hour window and people are chasing us out the room. So given the point, okay, we have an AD who's going to give us some wisdom.
Well, I've actually there's been a bit of discussion on the IESG, and I have thought that we would remind people just while you're in the meetings, if you're not at the mic, please wear your masks. There are people testing positive that aren't wearing masks, and the masks are mandatory. So I just needed to please say, if you're in the session and you're not at the microphone talking, please wear the masks. But other than that, I'm the new AD, and I'm here to help as much as possible, and we'll do what I can. And if anybody needs anything, I'm around.
Thank you, Andrew. Let's make sure this is not a super spreader event. Oh, one more mic question. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, it's not a question, it's a comment. Human with Goldie Nokia. Should we in the next IETF come up with some beer success stories? I don't know whether that's part of the IETF or not, but just, show some of the deployments for.
Is Lenny here? Lenny's here. So isn't there some work in I2 where European I2, they've got some P4 implementations of beer and they're doing some actual live testing now?
Yeah, there's they presented it at MBOND last meeting or the one before. It's the French NREN Renator.
Oh yeah. Okay.
They have a network called RareNet, and it is a network of Tofino switches, P4 switches that they implemented beer on, and it is a beer network. It's a global network, R&E network that does have beer running, and they added an AMT relay and a unicast to multicast translator. So yeah, come to MBOND or check out. We'd love to. There's a mailing list that talks about this deployment, but it's a pretty neat deployment, and it's exciting because it has the confluence of both beer and AMT, which is kind of an interesting, very promising mix. So yeah, that's a cool network to take a look at.
Can you send me the links or send them to the list, and then?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Definitely. If I don't, I forgot. So just remind me.
Yeah, I'll kick you.
I can also add that since you asked, Greg, we'd love to have in MBOND, your other working group. Don't forget about us.
I'll be there.
If there are operational, where are we with beer? Are we ready for operational considerations, and are we ready for ops documents and drafts in MBOND pertaining to beer? Because I think that would, if we're at that point now, we would very much welcome that in MBOND.
Excellent. Thank you, Lenny, for off the cuff there. Appreciate it. Next.
Jeffrey from Juniper. So as a multicast engineer, I've always said beer is the best multicast technology I have seen. But its deployment has been kind of disappointing, mainly because it's new encapsulation, new forwarding algorithm, and therefore you either need programmable chips or you need brand new chips. And that gives us chicken egg problem. There have been many customers wanted to do beer. They talk to us, to many vendors, and they say, "Oh, you cannot do this yet. Oh, you cannot do this on all platforms." Therefore, they back off. When they back off, the vendors also back off. They say, "Oh, not many customers want it." So this kind of chicken and egg problem is what prevents its wide deployment. But pioneer vendors and pioneer operators will break the chicken egg dilemma, and I am optimistic that it will happen and in the near future.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
No, sorry, I have a lot of back pain. I can't stand it a lot. What was it? 3 points. So the first one, just to retaliate on your great recommendation at the beginning for chairs, me. For the people in the room, please make sure that you are logged in at least once into Meet Echo, because that's how you're getting counted, right? So you want to know that for the room size next time. Sorry, it was too late for this meeting here, but that's so. There is the on-site tool. We should all use this for the microphone line. I never understood it. I don't think we need it for the microphone line, but kind of for counting how many people are in the room and the proceedings. I think that's very useful because we don't have blue sheets.
Taurus, for some clarity, I'm logged in here at the laptop. That counts me as well, though. I don't have to.
I hope so. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Good. I don't have to do both. But for those who aren't in Meet Echo, they can just use the scan and then get on the blue
exactly.
sheet.
Or you just use the tool, whatever. I haven't figured out. I need to ask the tooling people how they in the proceeding actually, count the stuff. But if you're not on any online tool, they can't count you.
Yeah. Got it. It's it's all done automated now.
Yeah. Exactly.
The sheets are no longer blue.
Right. There was something in the middle. I forgot. Okay, H. And then, I mean, hope you don't find this offensive, but really, come positively mooted to the MSR6 BOF, right? And consider that, this whole technology maybe can use another even more, maybe researchy and longer term solution, because one of the things we specifically haven't achieved is getting really into host stacks. And I think that just by taking the word IPv6 on it and making it native v6, we may have a better chance.
Let's not have the discussion here, because encapsulation doesn't dictate host.
Oh no, but all I'm saying is just come with a positive attitude, right? Let's not dwell on past things. Thanks.
Next.
Greg Mirsky Erickson. I really appreciate the ask for more ops related information, and I think that that's what OEM is for. So it's basically using our alphabet soup. It's operation, administration, maintenance. So I'm part of this effort, and as chairs noted, working on ping document, and ping document then enable us to progress MTU discovery and BFD documents. So I hope that will be a good addition to the ops related suite.
Excellent. Thank you. And one more?
Yeah, Human Bitgolding Nokia. Just to comment on the chicken and egg issue, I do agree on that. But I guess there's a lot of great work in this working group. There's a lot of drafts that are trying to address different parts of the beer technology. But for the providers, well, not providers, for the main companies that are implementing beer, I would imagine that we want to concentrate on a set of functionality that we can interrupt very nicely with each other and get this thing going, right? Because, as you said, we need, like, let's be honest here, we need the deployments to start putting more technology into our routers. If we don't have the deployments, there are other higher priority stuff that companies will start working on. Yeah. So that's all I'm trying to point out, is that maybe in the next meeting we can talk about some of the main pieces of beer work that we need to implement on all these companies, the tier 1 companies that we are, so we can get this thing up and deployed in the customer sites a little bit more. Again, I don't know whether this is IETF or this is offline conversation. That's the part I'm kind of wondering,
Sure.
how we can tackle that.
Just a quick reply. Maybe, I told the secretary again, maybe looking into what we all came here for, service provider in the wide area isn't the only, thing we can attack, right? So data centers, we've seen Michael Menth and companies, P4 implementations.
Yeah.
So data center may be more ripe, even though we may not be the ones that have the best connections there, but maybe it's just talking to the right people, right?
And J2 Broadcom has support now. That's a huge step.
Okay. Niels Warnke from Deutsche Telekom, so from the network operator side. The chicken and egg problem, which have been mentioned from Jeffrey and Human, and also the operations management side mentioned from Greg, are very relevant to us, because for us it's always the question how interoperable is the stuff, because it's not a secret we are not on a single vendor strategy. So that point one is very important, but the other point as well is that we are getting challenged internally also a lot. How many others of our other telcos are using it? Are they using it in the backbone, or is it a data center technology? Because this determines for us also how mature is the technology to use. Or are we the first one, or are we the only one demanding it? Because this has also obviously, in the long run, implications on how well is it maintained, how well is it tested, how well is it developed further for upcoming feature sets. So having somewhere a source other than personal contacts to get a grasp of how many providers are interested and how many providers are using it, and for which cases would be really beneficial also for me and my arguments to use it internally to develop it further, and to give it also some more relevance in order in contrast of implementation. Yeah.
Excellent. So if I can just wrap this up with my experience in this as well, I haven't spoken to a single vendor who looked at this and said, "Oh, I don't like it." It's always, when can I get it? What platform is it on? How many platforms support it? But then you get to that. Who else is doing it? There's that coward state, right? Which I understand. But this is forwarding plane. This is just not another routing protocol. This is the forwarding plane. So it's the narrow part of the hourglass. It's the big challenge. It's new hardware. And just to your point, Jeffrey, too, not all programmable chips give you that option, because it requires header manipulation post-replication. And if there's not a pipeline to do that, you have no programmable path to do it. So even programmable chips aren't necessarily ready for this. So it's a heavy lift. Even if the implementation is simple, it's still more bits.
So I also just wanted to add that, as taking off my AD hat and speaking as an operator, one of the things we've been working on internally are certain routing devices, etc., that are more tailored for the African market, size-wise, etc. And we are working to implement a lot of the stuff in our products as well. So yeah.
Wait, Torlis has another comment?
Yeah, on your end, just going back, original multicast was also pushed in the market by software implementations, right? So that's the question: what is the strategies that we find marketplaces where that happens, and then the big elephants are getting moved last, right? So that's always been the problem when we primarily selling from the big elephant devices with expensive hardware need to want to make a jump start for new technology.
All right. We have one more mic approach.
David Lampotter. So there's also a chicken and egg with the software implementations. Speaking as someone who would do one of the software implementations, we are stuck because the use cases from data centers and telcos in this, and they want the hardware implementations, and they don't see the point of starting with the software implementations, and there's yeah.
So there is a joint session from Babel, Manet, and Roll on which are looking into multicast, and so we've tried already to discuss BIER beer itself or beer type technologies with role, and then we just didn't have the time and critical mass and so on. So maybe we can get more critical mass into that, software space, because I think there are a lot of use cases all around. But yeah, obviously people haven't worked enough. These people here are mostly paid for by big boxes sold for big service providers. So we'll need to expand the community.
Not me. All right. I am an independent contributor. All right. Any other questions, comments, gripes, fruit, veggies? Is that? We got one more. We got one more.
Hi, this is Ron Infeld, chair of the Monet Working Group, and the session that Turles just mentioned is on Friday morning, first session.
Okay.
On Friday.
Excellent.
And yeah, my question is indeed, these are mostly software-based routing solutions that we're looking at there, and would beer be applicable there? But at least Sandy is giving a presentation on how to carry beer information in the Babel protocol. But how this works on the forwarding plane is not yet clear to me, so I hope to find that out before Friday.
We're on it. All right. Once, twice. Thank you so much. Have a great week.
Hello?
Happy to be the.
Hello? Hello?
Hello. Yes,
Hello?
Sandy?
Yes, I just want to add some discussion for the because in China we had talked beer technology to operators years ago. So I think that in China, many operators know that beer is a very good technology and they want to use it. But the driven for the beer deployment is that how to use it for the application. So we had talked the beer technology with CDN content delivery. So and some media delivery application to work with it. So I think that maybe later beer can be used in China. Not very long. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Sandy. All right, everybody. Congratulations. You've already signed the blue sheets. Magic. Thank you very much. Have a great week. Masks on.
That was an exhausting long meeting.
With the setup. Just to get us running, 10, 12 minutes is work. Good thing we had a short agenda. No, ice. Ice is heads down. What's that? Ice is still here. No. He actually jumped on the list like a month or so ago and had some input. I was kind of surprised because he's pretty busy. But I think, from what I understand, they may be coming out with some info like this summer. So yeah, we might hear what they're doing. I mean, it's pretty clear as an SD-WAN play, knowing the players. But yeah, what structurally what they're really doing, we'll find out. All right. Yeah, this has been fun. It's been 2 years of remote, just kind of doing my own thing for a while. Now I come here. Okay, I remember this. Last night, talking to smart people, talking about hard problems. Like, this is fun. I enjoy what I'm doing in my own time as well, but I need my head challenged. It's like, yeah, don't get that done too much by just building. Someone's after me, hang on. You got lunch plans? Don't. Got some chat about some interesting stuff going on in Dundee. Hey, how are you doing? Good. How are you? Yeah, not too bad. What you been up to?
As usual.
Yeah.
It's really good to come out of nest after 2 years.
Yes. Yes. Hey, Steak, how you doing?
See ya.
Yeah.
Oh, you are based somewhere close by here.
Yeah, I'm in Northern Virginia. Yeah, so
how far
DC.
is it?
About 2.5 hours without traffic. So it's a nice little short drive. And I grew up around here, so it's good to get back. My parents are 20 minutes away in Jersey, so okay.
Good for you. Really good.
Yes, yes.
Know the local good beer spots.
I could tell you restaurants and wine.
Yeah,
You know, I don't know about beer.
Yeah.
That's, you know, I'm not a big fan of American beer, so I can't give you good advice.
Yeah. Well, there's some
It's
good
because
stuff
you're
around
you're
here.
living on old knowledge. Very
Yeah.
old knowledge.
A lot has changed.